Yeah, today we're speaking about AI again, but today we have something different. We're speaking in English today because we're having a cooperation with the Forschungscampus Mittelhessen with our project AI for Startups. My name, as always, is Maurice Jelinski, and today I have a special guest here, Dr. Kirsten Zantvoort in Marburg. And today we're speaking about your research, and the next couple of episodes, we're also speaking with your colleagues about the specific AI research in your different fields. I'm really looking forward to it. Welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, of course. And let's jump right into it. We have a couple of questions about you, your career path. And the very first question would be, could you briefly describe your current position at AKA and the main goal of your data science team?
Absolutely. Yes, so I am a data scientist, a postdoc, and I'm responsible for a team of data scientists here at the university in Marburg. And the institute is the Institute for Artificial Intelligence in Medicine. And that's a kind of a new institute. It was actually founded in 2019 in a joint venture between the clinic and the university. And our goal or our mission really is to look into how we can bring AI into clinical routine care and into the everyday clinical decisions. And my particular position is about how we can take the very large numeric data sets that we have in routine care and how we can transform them into information, into recommendation that clinicians can use to make better decisions.
So it's probably also a lot about data science in your specific area. And we did a little research about you. And you also have a diverse background from economics to business analytics and the pharma industry. Maybe you can also outline your key stage and how you came up with the project here.
Sure. It was a little bit of a windy road, so to
Mhm.
speak. So originally, I actually started studying languages, but quite quickly figured out that that was not the path I wanted to stay on. And like many people that don't really know what they want to do, I then decided to study business and economics. And reading that bachelor degree, I still wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to do a master, but not what exactly in. So I decided to do an internship. And I did that in a retail company in corporate development. So mainly like strategic project management
Mhm.
and really loved it there. So I ended up staying 2.5 years full time. And during that time, I more and more got into more analytical projects. And actually, like I never really thought I was a super analytical person, but I had a boss who was like, "You're good at this, so how about you do this?" And towards the end, I was doing projects where it would take 30 minutes to open the data sets in Excel.
Mm.
And I was thinking like there has to be a better way to do this than Excel. So obviously there is. And that led me to quit my job and go back to university and get a master's degree in business analytics. That then led to a PhD in data science. And during my PhD, I already got into health data, but more mental health data. So I was working with the internet psychiatry in Stockholm and
Mm.
doing some machine learning on outcome and dropout prediction. And then when I finished that last year, I decided that I wanted to move into physical health. And that's how I ended up here.
It's really interesting that you're coming from languages because I myself I did some history studies and all that
Okay.
stuff, and I also got somehow into this AI thing. So it's really interesting how people starting with something, but I mean language are also some kind of systematic thing, and I
It
mean
is.
there's some things that they have in common. And if you're speaking about those large data sets, maybe you can describe the feeling the first time you improved this Excel sheet you had with opening 30 minutes and all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, when I first learned Python, it was like
Yeah.
magic. I love it. And I think originally I always thought like programming is like this natural skill you're born with or you're not born with it. And there was like this mental hurdle. And then when I started learning it, I was like, that's it. Like it's just a language,
Yeah.
essentially. It's grammar and it's vocab. So it was great and I still love it. So
Yeah, perfect. So that brings me to the next question. Coming to your research, what are your primary research projects right now with your team you're currently working on?
So we have a bunch of different projects, and a lot of them are also like supporting data management with the clinic. But I think the biggest one for me would be the emergency data. So we're currently working on getting about more than 200,000 patient visits from the central emergency department here in
Mhm.
Marburg. And within those 200 something thousand are about 90,000 that came by ambulance.
Mm.
And or because in Germany we have the system where we don't only have the ambulance, we also have an emergency physician that if necessary, if indicated, will drive out. And we actually have quite some data on that as well. And yeah, so the biggest project there is to look how can AI support those decisions that have to be made in emergency medicine,
Mhm.
especially since they're very high volume. I think there are like 30, 40,000 patient visits a year
Yeah.
just here in Marburg. So yeah, there's a lot of volume, a lot of heterogeneity, and a lot to help.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting field of research because we also have real problems. I think in the sector of medicine with physicians and doctors coming short in emergency rooms and all stuff like that. Um, Maybe you can give me some insight on the bridge, this implementation gap, and is there rise it a major challenge in medicine?
Yeah, so when we start research, usually we kind of start in a sandbox, right? Like
Hmm.
we will take retrospective data, data about things that have happened in the past, and then we will develop models on that. But then those models are supposed to help in real life, real time decisions. And those decisions that are taking place, like I said, I was in retail before, and there you have decisions like, what font or color do you take? And if
Hmm.
people don't like it, you A B test it. And then the worst that can happen is that you lose some revenue.
Yeah.
But medical decisions obviously are wildly different. And the healthcare system is a very complex, it's a high stake, and it's a very user driven
Hmm.
system. So even if in my sandbox, my AI model is doing great, when it hits reality, it might not anymore. And the thing with healthcare is that standardization saves life and it has to be very robust, right?
Yeah.
But that makes innovation difficult because innovation is always trying things out, see what happens. But when lives are at risk, you have to be very careful about that, obviously. So I think that is like the one of the reasons why there is this implementation gap between the potential we see in AI in some
Hmm.
industries and then how much of it is actually fulfilled and realized in healthcare today.
So yeah, I think the regulatory hurdles are really big, but it's also a good thing because
Yes.
if you look at the stakes, they're really high. And maybe you can explain some of your specific work in emergency care regarding sepsis and acute kidney injury.
Mhm.
How does the AI intervene in those scenarios?
Yeah. So, like I said, I've only been here for a year, so we're
Hmm.
still in the starting phases. So far, the AI doesn't intervene at all, but I can tell you how we're planning on doing that. Generally, whenever someone comes to the emergency department, they're triaged. And triaged essentially just says how urgently they need to be seen by the doctor, because obviously we can't have 100 doctors standing ready for whatever patients walk in. So we need to prioritize. And some illnesses are not very severe. So it's okay when people wait a little bit. Others are very severe and it's easy to see them. So they will be seen by a doctor immediately. But then we have this problem area where very severe illnesses like sepsis and acute kidney
Uh,
injury present like they're not that bad, when really they have high mortality, high life quality cost,
yeah.
also high monetary costs for the healthcare system, like intensive care, dialysis in the end. So the idea is that, especially for a human that is under immense pressure, there are a lot of people, there is a lot of noise, there are a lot of decisions. They might miss people that need
Mhm.
to be seen immediately. And we work on how AI can support them by risk flags, so to say, that just say, like, maybe take the vitals of this person just to check if they're really doing as well as they seem on first sight. Or maybe call a nephrologist
Yeah.
to see if acute kidney injury might be a likely problem that's going on here. So yeah, it's mainly about looking at where are we under triaging
Mhm.
and helping support finding those people, but also in deciding that also implies deciding who might not need to be seen immediately
Yeah.
because we're getting increasingly high numbers of patients in the emergency department, and it's really really hard for the system to keep up with that. So yeah, so that's mainly
Yeah.
what we do.
That sounds super interesting, and I think it really combines all your backgrounds from this economic perspective, but also from this healthcare perspective. And everyone who was in an emergency unit once can relate to those issues,
Yeah.
because sometimes you're really having a bad injury in your own perspective, but sometimes it might be not that bad if you compare to the next person coming. So I think this is a real good thing for assisting doctors in real life. Um, Maybe you can give us some more insight on your day-to-day work. How does it work to work with the data? How do you implement all those AI models? So maybe you can just explain how you exactly your projects unfold for people from other backgrounds and disciplines.
Mhm. So I think every of my projects has kind of like three big pillars, three
Mhm.
topics. And the first one is one that I have been spending a lot of time with, which is kind of the interaction between use case and data. Because there are a lot of medical questions that would be absolutely great if we could solve them. But just because there's a need doesn't mean that AI is the right tool to
Mhm.
solve it. And when I say AI, usually the problem is not the AI, it is the data. So, what data do we have available where we really believe that AI can support decisions in real time? So, there we, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we did a workshop with three doctors where we are just like mapping out what decisions are you making, what patients are you struggling
Mhm.
with, and also what data are you entering at which step? Because if we don't have the data,
Yeah.
we can't make decisions with it. So that is like one big part. The second part is kind of the models and methods part, because obviously we are data science researchers, and my PhD students will be doing data science PhDs. So there's also this aspect of method development, looking into that. What are upsides, downsides? Where can we push the boundary a little more of
Yeah.
the methods that are currently there? Um, and also look into what makes most sense for the specific use cases that we have. And the third one, which is kind of a new one and one that I'm super interested in, but only starting to get into, is the idea of system interfaces.
Mhm.
Because let's say I have the perfect model. That doesn't mean the doctor can do anything with it, right? Like it's just a probability.
Yeah.
So, how can I translate this model output into actionable insights that help doctors make better clinical decisions? And there, like I said, we're in the start. So we're doing a systematic review. We're looking at what do other people do, essentially.
Mhm.
We are currently designing a study where we look at uncertainty communication, not just a
Mhm.
prediction, but the uncertainty around it. And we're starting to build that kind of area because I think that the implementation gap you mentioned, I
Mhm.
think like that's a big thing
Yeah.
that we need to design systems that help, not just models that
Yeah.
are accurate.
Yeah, there were so many things you just said. I will start with the first thing you said about the data. It's really important to have the good data. To have the data at all is also a thing. From my perspective, I'm working with a lot of companies, with a lot of startups and everything, and they always saying, "Oh, we just need to use some AI," and it's always the same. And you have to tell the people it's not just some magic thing
No.
you're putting onto
Yes.
some idea. It's real hard data work. You have to give the good data, and that would be maybe a question I want to ask right now. Um, do you have any setbacks with biased data or bad data? How do you work with that?
All the time. All the time. I think I'm currently still like I've been here for a year, and not very small portion of my time has been allocated to even understand what the data is
Mhm.
I'm looking at, right? Things like, for example, we work a lot with diagnosis, but then we have something called ICD-10 codes. And ICD-10 codes are an international
Yeah.
system that codes illnesses based on like hierarchies. Sounds great. However, it's made for financial purposes.
Mm,
ICD-10 is meant to help the help decide how much money you get per case. It's not actually a medical tool.
mm,
So when I have a diagnosis there, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the equivalent to what I want because I look at medical things, not at accounting. So those are things that can be very hard, and I try to spend a lot of times with the data generation process. Like I get the doctors tell me when they input what, why. Do they do
mm,
it because they're communicating with a human? Do they do it because they have to? They're legally required to.
yeah.
I'm currently working on seeing if I can go out with the EMTs to kind of see how they enter data that I will be working with.
Mhm.
Because I think if I don't understand where the data comes from, I will not be able to use it in a good way. And that's kind of vital. And then also sometimes I want to do a project, but I can't because I
Yeah.
realize the data will not have the information I need.
Yeah.
So that also happens.
Yeah, and also you also said something about the user-centered information design. I think
Yeah.
it's crucial to keep an eye on that because if we're looking at our smartphones, our TVs, and everything is about good UX UI design, that the people trust those things
Yeah.
and don't be frustrated when they can't get to their goals. So, how do you ensure that doctors who are in high pressure situations use that AI suggestions in your field? Also, I have these two terms, probability versus trust,
Mhm.
because as you said, an AI is never 100% sure. Won't be. And how do they deal with that in those models and those applications?
I don't really have an answer because I actually think that it is vital right now to treat the question, how do we do that, as an empirical question.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I don't assume I know. I'm a researcher trying to find out.
Yeah.
And obviously, I still have hypotheses. Like, I'm a human. I understand how information, like, I process
Yeah.
information, and I can already say, I don't think this is going to work, or I think this might be worth a chance. But that's like this third research brand I'm really trying to get into. Looking into also what is actionable. Like sometimes you get information, but what you do doesn't change. And then what is that information worth? So that's kind of like this aspect of how do we get them to use it? We ask them, we consider that, and then we assume that they don't even know either.
Mhm.
And we need to go beyond that
Yeah.
to really ensure it works. And then trust in AI is kind of a difficult topic, but a very important topic because I think that there is quite a big discrepancy between what people should trust and what people will trust,
Yeah.
right? Like large language models are built for people to trust them. Should they be trusted?
Yeah.
Different question. So, obviously, in the field I'm working, I focus more on models they should trust.
Mhm.
How we do get to trust them, that we will have to see. Especially, like you said, they're in high pressure.
Yeah.
I can make their job harder
I know.
just because I like AI, right? So yeah, we have to see, and we try to speak a lot with them. We try to test things with them. We try to see what really happens, measure objectively what happens
Mhm.
when they're presented with our systems, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tricky question, I admit this. But I think it will be a whole new branch in AI research because Miss Hanek, Professor Hanek, is also speaking about explainable AI
Yeah,
in another episode of this podcast. I think this will be a huge question. And we also had
yeah.
event about all this complex AI and trust from a psychological perspective, but also from a technical perspective. And I think we will see in the next years how people will deal with AI. There's another question about this high pressure situations. You already said it about triaging patients. Um, do you have any plans like use such kind of AI in these high pressure situations, which are quite rare, like catastrophes, when you have a really large number of patients? Are there any? Are you thinking about that?
We aren't yet,
Okay.
but I like in the recent project proposal I did, I argued that if our system is at the brim of not working under normal
Mhm.
circumstances, we're in trouble
Mhm.
in case of extreme
Yeah.
events. So my idea is we need to optimize the system that we have right now, and that in and by itself will help us when extreme events happen, because the more like buffer we have before the system gets into trouble, the better
Mhm.
it is. So yeah, we currently aren't.
Okay.
We're still working on the basic.
But that's really interesting because I thought it from the another perspective. I thought like if you have a catastrophe,
Yeah.
you at least have the AI which assists you, which is even not that good maybe, but it can help you. But there will be legal hurdles and everything. But
Yeah. And I mean, predicting how a system will like what up and downsides it has in a situation that's impossible to
mhm,
predict.
yeah, exactly. It's
Interesting.
hard.
I'm glad I don't have to solve that right now.
Yeah, maybe that's also something for the future, and we will see. But let's get back to the more technical perspective of your research and not just hypothetical questions about catastrophes and everything. Um, Maybe just what are big hurdles when you're integrating this real-time data into your models?
Um, I mean, there are a lot. I think I already touched up on like what data really means and how data is entered.
Mm.
Because in our current system, almost all data is entered actively by a human. And you can imagine the last time you have might be the most important cases to do, but those will be the cases where we don't have data to feed
Yeah.
into the AI, right? Like if someone is really sick
Mhm.
and has to go to the ICU, you probably will call that doctor and not sit down,
Yeah.
carefully enter all the vitals, and then see what happens with the AI, right? So I think that this like manual aspect is a big thing. Also, where the data is at, like different doctors have different fields where they put certain data. Their mistakes may be made. So
Mhm.
pulling the data in a quality where we can actually use it in real time is a challenge. Pulling the data in general on time can be a challenge because hospital systems are obviously built for a very big and important reason, which is not facilitate AI research.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them. But these legacy systems are very can be difficult to deal with. And sometimes there's also this problem of latency where by the time the data is there and available, the decision should have been made already.
Yeah.
So that is also a challenge for sure. And then in terms of like really technical how you access it, it depends a lot. I think there's a lot happening also with like fire standards and like
Yeah.
interoperability. So yeah.
Yeah, that would be the next question. Perfect. How do you validate a model like that when it's finished or in the process of finishing it? You already said there will be some legal questions and regulatory questions. How can I imagine this whole process?
So, validating a model is a multi step process. So, usually, what we do, we will have training data. And in the use cases I named, that will be 2019 till 2025. And then there are certain methods like nested cross validations where you kind of try to simulate how the model would have done if you had asked it to make predictions on unseen data. When we will pitch different models against each other to see what works, and then we choose one model type, and then we test that on the data that by the time we're done will be available, which is this year's data, right?
Oh,
So we can do whatever we want to make the best model we can on the data from the last years. And then we will act like we use that model on the 2026 data and see how it does. If it's good, we will then um, go into different other aspects like the actionability, like can people actually do something with it? Because that's just an accurate model. It's not a useful model yet. And by the time we do have a system, we will have to look into clinical trials to see
Mm,
how it actually informs and changes clinical decisions and outcomes. And that, for example, we have the Clinical Trial Center here in
mm,
Marburg, which is also for Middle Hessen. And they're experts in clinical trials. I'm not.
mm.
So by the time we get there, by the time I'm done with my
Yeah,
model and happy, then we need other experts to kind of help us evaluate the
yeah.
actual clinical impact and kind of go step from step by there until we are pretty sure, as sure as we possibly can be, that this model is something good and not something harmful. And hopefully, then we someday
Yeah.
will be in routine care.
And yeah, it sounds like this huge task. And there was one question coming to my mind right now. Like, if we have this finished model and everything is fine with it, and we can use it like in Marburg and Mittelhessen and everywhere, that would be the question: can we use it anywhere? Because if we would use it in the US or maybe in Africa, there will be probably another hurdles.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. But I also don't. I don't think that that has to be
Mm,
necessary. And I actually think that this idea that there is this one model and it works for everyone and everywhere. So far, I haven't seen any examples for
mhm,
it, right? Like there are also a lot of articles arguing that ChatGPT's
yeah,
like point of view is very westernized and it doesn't actually work for the entire world. And I also don't think that numerical models will. Which has a lot of different reasons. I think with numeric models, it's a little easier. Like if I train on laboratory data elsewhere should also be similar,
yeah,
more similar than when we have different cultures and
yeah, sure.
languages, at least. But still, I think that the training the model is not the hard part.
Mm,
So retraining a model on your own data, either training or like optimizing it on it, isn't that difficult. It's more the integration,
yeah.
the differences in how things are done, how decisions are made that make it hard to like transplant a model from one part to another. And even within Hessen, I mean, we have discussed that probably like a very urban hospital is going to have a different
Mm,
population, different prevalences of certain diagnoses than we have in Marburg in a more rural like area. So even there, it might be an hour further, it doesn't work,
yeah,
but it also might be that somewhere in Schleswig-Holstein it does work.
yeah.
But we have to test for it.
Yeah, but I think that's an important part to have in mind for implementing those models because you still have to fine tune and do some
Yeah,
work and get some fresh data. But I think it's important that you have this basic research where you developing the frameworks and everything, and you always have to use new data and try to keep it alive. That's the whole process of being probably. All right, so that was a really interesting sneak peek into your research. Maybe we can go a little bit further. Another huge question is, which role does interdisciplinarity play in your research?
yeah. I mean, generally, like the interdisciplinary like
Mm,
nature of my work requires me to talk to a lot of different disciplines to the point where I think application research in AI is not even interdisciplinary anymore. It's transdisciplinary, right?
uh,
Like it's not that we we just like kind of try to work together. It's like we have this problem and we have to create knowledge together around what is even possible and how can we
mm,
solve it. So even within our institute, we're super interdisciplinary. Like we have psychologists, we have data scientists, we have software developers, and we're still growing. So yeah, I think that this like interdisciplinary idea is super important and is not only supporting, it kind of is my my
yeah,
work.
yeah, that sounds great, and I think it's also some kind of role model also for companies. I think to think about to think outside the box. I mean, if you're trying to implement a model, you're not just a data scientist. You also have to think about all the eventualities and everything that's coming into your mind.
Yeah,
With you already said it with the user-centered design. The people should use it as well. It just shouldn't be a model that works well. If nobody's using it, there will be no point in producing it.
definitely.
Yeah. And but coming to the transdisciplinary, I think there's a really good word for that. We also have some questions from your fellow colleagues, and I have to take a peek at them. We also have a question from Professor Dobbs. She's asking if AI can outperform humans in many tasks. Do we still need to understand how the human brain works, or can AI research move on without neuroscience?
Um, I genuinely think that we should explore different avenues. I very much am from the kind of mechanism agnostic point of research,
Mhm,
right? I see an input, I see the output. I don't care what happens in between. If I can predict the output, I'm good.
mhm.
And I mean, that's kind of polemic the way I put
Yeah.
it. And that would imply no, we don't need to understand how the human brain works. On the other hand, I do very much feel like there is no useless knowledge. There might be knowledge that we don't know how to use yet. And I also don't understand enough about neuroscience to even gauge its value. So I know that with the way I approach my work right now, I don't need to understand how the brain works. I am very happy that very smart people are
Yeah.
figuring that out, so I don't have to. And I can very much imagine that there can be a lot of value in it for sure. It's all about kind of the holistic approach of how decisions are made. Because, like, in the end, what we are trying to do is optimize
Yeah.
decisions, right? And the more we understand about that, it can't hurt.
That is a great answer. Yeah, we also have a question from your colleague, Professor Hannig. From the perspective of your own research field, what do you expect to fundamentally change over the next 10 years in methods, in theory, or practical application?
I hope that we move away to actual impact because currently, most papers you see, especially in medicine, they talk about AUC and accuracy and recall. Um, and I think that is an absolutely necessary first step, but it only is the first step. So I very much hope that we move into okay, so what,
Yeah,
right? We move into what is actually how is the world different after you have trained your model from how it is before? Because I think that those things might vary. Like you need
yeah,
a rather accurate system for it to be useful, but the accurate system isn't automatically useful. So I hope that that will change um, a lot more than it has so far.
I think that's a really good point when I'm thinking about my field of work, like media. When you're now seeing this AI slop trend, when people are using all those models for creating nonsense videos, but that's the internet as well. But I think that this whole point of impact is really important if we're seeing also those models and AI in general as a tool, which should benefit the society and also the whole world. So yeah, that's a really good point. But maybe you can say, let's say, look ahead to 2030. Do you envision your tools changing the daily routine in emergency care?
Yeah. I very much hope and work towards the models helping humans, and not only patients but also doctors because
Mm,
they're doing a quite challenging job, right? So with requirements getting higher and higher, the world being complexer, more diagnosis being out there, more people
yeah,
seeking help. I hope that the models that we train and validate and yeah put into systems can help save lives, can help improve quality of lives of patients and staff. Um, yes, I think that's that's the hope there.
yeah, great. So that was my last question. I really thank you for your time. It was really interesting
Very
to get an
welcome.
insight on this really interesting work. We already had some specific research in our project AI for Startups about the whole this medical thing. Professor Hirsch was one of the first people who were in our project with this cardio IQ thing, and there are so many projects that are really interesting. So I'm looking really forward to your models and how they will shape, and I'm really sure they will shape the future of emergency rooms. In the next episodes, we're also talking about some different AI research from the specific research fields. I'm really looking forward to that as well. And we will welcome you in the next episodes with new research fields already, oh, also in English. Yeah. But that's it. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time.